In Ross chapter 35, we're dealing with another set of weak verbs known as the One-Vav and One-Yod weak verbs. Hebrew has a number of verbs that are spelled with root One-Yod. However, historically, these verbs can be divided into two sorts. Those that are originally One-Vav, that is, the original root One-Vav was changed to a root One-Yod, and so when we see it in Hebrew today, and in the Bible, it actually is spelled with a yod in root one position. So a verb like yashav would be an example of that. This is how you spell that. So this originally would have been a vav, vashav, and it was converted to a yod in root one position. But those were originally one-vav verbs. And then there are those that are originally one-yod verbs. Here the root one-yod is retained, and so it looks exactly like the one-vav verbs after their vavs became yod. So if you look at the handout, I've given you just a little schematic here. So basically one-yod verbs, all of our current verbs in Hebrew today look like one-yod verbs, but originally some had a root one-vav, and originally some had a root one-yod. They end up looking the same. So yashav would have been vashav. This asterisk indicates a theoretical form, and that means to sit. And yarash would be an example of an originally one-yod verb, to possess or to inherit. Now, it appears that Hebrew avoided writing vav when it was the first root letter of a noun or verb. So whenever a word began with a vav, that vav was switched to a yod. And what I'd like to do is just open up a lexicon with you and let you look at the holiday lexicon and see how many words actually begin with a vav in the Hebrew language, or at least in biblical Hebrew. And this word holiday should have an A right here, holiday. Now, what we're looking at here is my copy of the Concise Hebrew and Aramaic Lexicon of the Old Testament in my Logos Bible software program. So this was produced by William Holliday. And let's look at the table of contents. I have my students purchase this one as a beginner lexicon, and eventually they'll upgrade to the more expensive one known as HALOT, the Hebrew Aramaic Lexicon of the Old Testament. But this is a good grammar to start out with. Now, what I want you to notice over here is that I've got my table of contents up, and we have this really, it's a list of letters that indicate the alphabet, and when I click on the left arrow here for Aleph, it's going to expand and give me a listing of words. But you'll notice that besides this set of words here, there's another arrow to expand that out, and so the individual words now will appear. So the word Av for father, and Ave for shoot. Okay, now I can collapse this, but if you notice, there's quite a lot of sets of words that begin with Aleph. So this is not the entire list. Each of these expands. So there's hundreds of words that begin with Aleph in the Hebrew Bible. This is the set of words beginning with Bet, and notice there's a hyphen between these two, so this is a range, and I can expand that. This range expands further, and again, I have a few hundred words that begin with Bet. I'm showing this to you so that you can see what happens when I get to the Vav here. Look at the Vav. I'm going to expand this, and notice there are no ranges. This is my set of words in the Hebrew Bible that begin with the letter Vav. The first one is the conjunction Vav, and then we have some names. Most of these are words that actually do represent names, but what you'll see is if we count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 words begin with a Vav. Now what happened here? What apparently happened is that Hebrew had more words that began with a Vav, but those Vavs were converted to Yods, and so those originally one-Vav words are now found in the Yod section of the lexicon. So I just want you to see how few actually begin with the letter Vav in Hebrew. Well, back to our handout now. You can see that we have a number of one-Vav verbs originally that now show up as one-Yod verbs. But this is going to matter because One-Vav verb behavior is going to have some weaknesses that are slightly different from the One-Yod verb weaknesses, but they also share some similarities. Let's talk about the typical weaknesses of these types of verbs, whether they're One-Vav or One-Yod originally. Note that when root 1 opens a syllable, it appears as a consonant yod. The yod you're seeing is a consonant. So with yashav here, the yod of yashav is in fact a consonant yod. All right, that is a consonant yod. He sat. Now, here are the weaknesses. The root 1 vav or yod will not close the syllable with the prefixes. So remember our prefixes. We have stem prefixes. What are those? The nifal nun, the hifil, and the hofal he. Those are stem prefixes. And the prefix conjugations, nutty prefixes. These are the prefixes that indicate person, gender, number in the prefix conjugation system, imperfect, cohortative, jussive, and so forth. This root 1 vav or yod, depending on whether it's originally one vav or one yod, it will not close the syllable. It's going to leave the prefix consonant in an open syllable, and it's going to take a long vowel instead of closing the syllable with root 1 and having a short vowel. And we'll see some examples of this in just a minute. Note here, this weakness occurs in all the same places as the root 1 nun experiences when trying to close the syllable. Remember where we had assimilation of the nun? Cal, imperfect, jussive, cohortative, WCI forms. The nifal perfect and participle had the nifal nun prefixes. And then all the hifil and hofal forms, both with the he prefixes when they're visible, as well as the nutty prefixes. All of these cause the root 1 nun to assimilate, and likewise we're going to have problems because the root 1 vav or yod will not want to close the syllable with those prefixes, and we'll see what happens here. Another weakness is that the original root 1 vav or yod will frequently appear as a vowel marker. That is, one of the mater letters. And so it's not really a consonant in this situation, it's a vowel. And in one place, the original root 1 vav will occur as a consonant, and it occurs only in the nifal stem with the nutty prefixes, and we'll see examples of that. So let's take a look at this chart that exemplifies the weaknesses that we're talking about here. So I'm going to start with the one-vav verbs, the verbs that are originally one vav. And we'll see here in the Cal Perfect, I've given you, in my first column, the strong verbs so that you can see how the one-vav verbs differ from those. It's a slight difference, but still, it's essential to know it. So with pakad, we have our long A, short A. In the Cal Perfect of yashav, he sat, is, well, the same vowel pattern. So there's nothing irregular here. Why? Because the root 1 letter is not trying to close a syllable with anything. It is actually opening a syllable. So that was my little point there a little while ago. The imperfect, yifkod, for yashav becomes yeshav. Now what's happening here? As I mentioned, the root 1 vav is not closing a syllable here. What I actually have is roots 2 and 3. The root 1 vav is actually not going to be visible here. And this yod is the 3ms prefix yod. So I only see roots 2 and 3, and this is in an open syllable with a long vowel. Okay, that is an open syllable with a long vowel. Compare that to the yif of yifkod. That is a closed syllable with a short vowel. So that's one of the things that I'm going to see here. Whenever the root 1 vav does not close the syllable, it's going to leave the prefix consonant open, and the vowel will be long. Okay, we're going to see this throughout. The nifal perfect is nifkad. So here, the nifal nun is closing the syllable with the root 1 pei. And that's a short vowel that goes with it, as you can see. So nifkad. Now, for the one-vav verb yashav, look at what happens. I get no shav. What do I have here? My holem vav is the vowel that goes with the prefix nun. I can only truly see roots 2 and 3. Root 1 is sort of visible, but in the form of a mater holem vav. All right? So notice this is open and long syllable. The noon prefix of the nifal perfect is visible, but this is not a closed syllable. So I will frequently see holum vavs showing up where I might have had closed syllables in the other forms. So nifkad, he was appointed. Noshav, he was settled. Okay, now the nifal imperfect is yipakade for the strong verb. And look what I have here. I have yivashev. Notice that this is not a shurik. That vav has its own vowel, kametz underneath it. And so this dot is in fact a dagesh forte, just as we had a dagesh forte in root 1 of the strong verb. This is to say that in the nifal prefix forms, like the imperfect, the jussive, cohortative, whenever I add my prefix, I should get doubling in root 1, and my original vav of the one-vav verbs will show as a consonant vav with doubling. Yivashev, tivashev, and so forth. Okay? The hifil perfect, hifkid, the hifil perfect of yashav, with that original vav in root 1 position is hoshiv. Hifkid, hoshiv. Notice I have a prefix hey, just as I had here, but this closes the syllable. My one vav does not close. It's a holum vav, hoshiv. Now, one of the things that's you've got to be aware of here is that in the hifil perfect, normally my vowel is an I-class vowel. But when I have one-vav verbs, the prefix vowel with the hey is actually a holum vav, which is a historically long A-class vowel. Okay? That is not normal. Okay? We're looking for I-class for the hifil perfect. All of the prefix forms of the hifil with the hey prefix and with the nutty prefixes, all of them are going to take the holum vav, where that root 1 vav would have been. And so I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between the hifil perfect 3ms and something like the hifil imperative 2ms. Or excuse me, I can tell the difference between the hifil imperative. But let's say we add the 2mp ending. It would be ho. Well, let's start with the 2ms. Ho shave is the 2ms. The uninflected form, as you remember, has the sere here. But when I add vocalic endings, the sere is going to revert to the irregularities that I am looking for with my hifil forms. So it would be hoshivu. Hoshivu. That would be the imperative 2mp in the hifil. Look at my hifil perfect 3ms. If I want to make it 3mp, I add a shurik to the end, and the irregularities was already there, and it's hoshivu. So the perfect 3cp of the hifil of one-vav verbs and the hifil imperative 2mp of one-vav verbs are going to look the same because I cannot distinguish them by an I vowel with the hey here in the perfect compared to an A vowel in the imperative. So we used to be able to use that, but for one-vavs that does not, there's no difference there. That doesn't work. Okay, so you have to pay attention to that. Now for the hofal, I have hofkad. Hofkad is my passive counterpart for hifkid. Okay, so the hofal has a closed syllable, and that's a kametz ketuf, which is a short and U-class vowel, right? Look at what I have with yashav, which is a one-vav verb. It's hu-shav, hu-shav. The front part of this is open, and I've got a shurik where that vav is a mater. So my one vav shows up in these places as a mater, as either a holum vav or with the hofal, I need a U-class vowel with that hey, just like I had a U-class vowel here, and it's a shurik. The back part is normal, follows the strong pattern. I have A-class vowels for my theme vowel, so hu-shav. So those are the one-vav verbs. Basically, I'm giving you the basic form, and you can just know that you add the personal endings and you're going to get the forms that you need to see. Those don't change. We're just looking at the weaknesses here. Now, the next little chart is the weaknesses that show up in the One-Yod verb. So look at the cow perfect. Again, I have pakad, he appointed, and then the verb for possessing. Yarash, he possessed. Remember, when my root 1 consonant, Yod here, has no prefixing, and it's starting a syllable, then it is a consonant Yod. All right? But when I want to add prefixes, like in the Cal imperfect, Yif code, what happens to Yarash here? It becomes Yirash. Yirash. Its theme vowel happens to be a pathak, and the nutty prefix Yod takes a Keurig Yod for its vowel. It is an I-class vowel, as we've got here, but notice this syllable was closed with a short vowel. This one is open with a long vowel, which is what we saw up here. So Yirash. I see roots 2 and 3. Root 1 is showing up as a mater, a Keurig Yod, a historically long vowel. Now, I have Yatav over here, which is the Cal perfect of a One-Yod verb, just like pakad. So I'm just wanting you to see the root letters here. What is the Hifil perfect of this verb? The Hifil perfect is Hativ. So I have Hifkid and Hativ. Hif would normally be in the Hifil perfect, closed and unaccented. I just noticed that I have a chet here. That should be a hey, okay, not a chet. So sorry about that. Hifkid. And look over here. I have the same Keurig Yod theme vowel, but my hey prefix is not taking a short vowel and a silent shavah. Remember, these One-Yods and One-Vav verbs do not close the syllable, so I have an open and long vowel. What vowel class is Sarah Yod? That's an A-class vowel, right? So just like we got over here, we got an A-class vowel for the Hifil perfect. That's not usual. It's not normal, okay? With these One-Vav and One-Yod verbs, I'm going to have an A-class vowel here, where I normally get an I-class vowel. And in the Hifil imperfect and other places, I'm going to get the A-class vowel, and that will be normal. I'll be looking for that. Okay, so Yafkid, Hifil imperfect, closing the syllable there with root 1. Yetiv, here my nutty prefix Yod has a Sere Yod vowel, which is a long vowel, and this is an open syllable. It's not closed. The tiv part is normal. Okay? So, Hativ, Yatav means to be good. Okay? To be good. And Hativ is to do good, or to do well. All right? So, he did well. He will do well. Those are the weaknesses of One-Yod verbs. They're not the only weaknesses, though. If you look at the next section, under 1, 2, 3, I have quick weaknesses. We talked about the quick weaknesses with our one-noon verbs. What are the quick weaknesses? What does the Q stand for? That's cal. First I is imperative, and the next IC is infinitive construct. So in the cal, imperative, and infinitive construct, most One-Vav verbs undergo aphoresis. And aphoresis is where root 1 goes AWOL on us. It goes missing completely. Just like many of the one-noon verbs when they don't have a holum theme vowel in their cal imperfect. And so they're going to behave similarly to the one-noon verbs we saw. What were the similarities? Well, in the cal imperative, how many root letters do we see? Just 2, roots 2 and 3. Root 1 has fallen into Sheol, right? And for the infinitive construct, only root 2 and root 3 show up, but we get the bonus tav after root 3. And so I have a chart here that exemplifies these weaknesses. Taking yashav, again with the meaning of to sit, and yarad, which is to go down. All right. Here's what we get in the cal imperfect. Yeshav, here I'm seeing roots 2 and 3. Root 1 is actually missing. It has fallen into Sheol. The Yod I see here is the 3ms prefix, okay? That is not the root 1 Yod you're seeing here. For Yarad, the cal imperfect 3ms is Ye-Raid, double seri, okay? So only 2 and 3 are visible. In the imperative, what do? Well, I chop off the prefix. Chop off the Ye, and I'm left with shave. Shave is the 2ms imperative in the cal, and that would be translated as sit, to one man. Ye raid, chop off the ye for the 3ms prefix, and I'm left with raid. Raid means go down. So, you know that song, Go Down Moses. I'm sure that if Yahweh were singing it, he would have used raid there. Now, the cal imperative also shows aphoresis. So, the cal infinitive construct. In these forms, only 2 and 3 are visible. Root 1 has fallen into Sheol here. Same thing with the infinitive construct. Root 1 is gone. Roots 2 and 3 are visible. And we get the extra bonus tav. And what vowel pattern are we going to use? We're going to use the segulate vowel pattern here. Okay, so shevet is to sit. Reddit is to go down, or the act of sitting and the act of going down. And then, as you know, when we add pronominal suffixes to the infinitive constructs where they've taken this extra feminine singular tav and segulate pattern, when we add the pronoun, root 3 will take the pronoun, and roots 1 and 2 here, or literally they're roots 2 and 3, they're going to create a closed syllable with a silent shavah, and usually a kirik here. But if we had a guttural, we'd get a pathak. Okay? We get a pathak. An example is from the Ross textbook. He gives you the verb yada, to know. The imperfect, this is a one-vav verb, he will know, is yeda with the pathak here because of the ayin guttural. The imperative would be da, and the infinitive construct would be da'at, and the personal pronoun added to da'at, my act of knowing, would be da'ti. Da'ti. Okay, where I get the A-class vowel. Why? Because of the guttural, where the ayin is here. Now, the reason we had to, a little further up, switch from Yarash to Yatav to show the One-Yod verbs is because Yarash actually shows some odd behavior in that sometimes it behaves according to the original One-Vav pattern, and sometimes it behaves according to the original One-Yod pattern. Now, Yarash is considered an original One-Yod verb, okay? It is considered an original One-Yod verb, but it does behave like a One-Vaver at various points. And so I've given this to you just for the sake of completeness here. You do not absolutely, need to be memorizing this, but I just want you to see what can happen. The cal imperfect 3ms of Yarash is Yirash. So here you can see it's following the One-Yod pattern. Originally, One-Yod verbs get a kirik yod for the prefix, the nutty prefix's vowel. The One-Vavs get the sere. Okay, so that's the difference between One-Vavs and One-Yods. One-Vavs get sere for under their nutty prefix. One-Yods get the kirik yod. Look at the next form. We have the cal imperative. And one way that the cal imperative of Yarash could occur to tell someone inherit or possess would be resh. Now, what do you see here? This looks like a one-vav verb, doesn't it? Because I only see roots 2 and 3. Root 1 here has fallen into Sheol. It's undergone aphoresis. That's a one-vav pattern, even though this is a one-yod verb. I could also see Yurash, where the yod of the root 1 yod reappears, and there's a vocal shavah under it, and the imperfect vowel from Yirash is here, the pathak, and here it's behaving like a one-yod verb with no aphoresis. So there are two ways that the imperative could show up, and actually there's another way. It could be resh or rash. So I could see aphoresis with the sere or the pathak. There it's really somewhere in between a one-vav and a one-yod. The infinitive construct in the cal of Yarash is reshet. Here, the root 2 and 3 letters are visible. Root 1 is in Sheol, and the bonus tav comes. So this is following the one-vav pattern. And then the hifil perfect and the other hifil forms, we're not going to write them all down, but notice that it's following the one-vav pattern here. It doesn't get the sere yod like the hifil of Yatav gets. It gets the holam vav, ho-rish, and that is following a one-vav pattern. So Yarash behaves as a one-yod and at times a one-vav verb, even though it is genuinely a one-yod verb. Now, on the next part of the handout, we have the verb yachol. Remember, yachol is a stative verb in the Cal that means to be able. And we need to talk about the Cal imperfect of this verb. Notice it has a yod here in root 1 position. So that means it could be a truly one-yod verb originally, or that yod could be the result of a root 1 vav that has switched the vav to a yod. Well, which is it here? The fact of the matter is that yachol is an original one-vav verb. And so the imperfect is going to not close the syllable, but that original vav will show up in the form of a vowel letter, a mater, a shurik. Okay? So take a look at the forms of the Cal imperfect. I've just given you 3 representative forms here. You could form them all now that you know the basic pattern here. He will be able is yuchal. Yuchal. So what do I have? I have roots 2 and 3 visible from yachol, kaf lamed. The root 1 is not really being seen because it's not a consonant here, but the shurik seems to be representing the fact that we had a vav here. And then the yod is my nutty prefix. It's the 3ms prefix. So you call, open syllable with a long vowel, which is characteristic of my one-vavs and one-yod verbs when I'm trying to add prefixes to them. So yuchal, he will be able. Switch the yod for a tav, and I've got she will be able. This also happens to be the 2ms form, so that could be you man will be able. And then I will be able, I can put an olive here, uchal, uchal, I will be able. Okay, so that's yachol in the Cal imperfect, one vav verb. The last thing is that the verb halach is an irregular verb in this way. We had the verb lakach. Remember, lakach, to take, was a verb that had a multiple personality problem. Okay, it thought it was a one nun verb even though it's a one lamed verb. And halach is another multi-personality verb in the Hebrew language. It is one guttural. It's got a hey for root 1, but in the Cal and Hifil stems, it behaves as if it were a one-vav verb. So what do one-vav verbs do? Well, in the Cal perfect, one-vav verbs are normal. Halach, he walked. That's why we already know this verb. But look at the Cal imperfect. I get yelech for he will walk. This yod prefix that I see is the 3ms prefix. So how many root letters do I literally see here? Only 2. Roots 2 and 3. Root 1 is gone. It has fallen into Sheol. He will walk. Yelech. If I wanted to say she will walk, I'd have telech over here. And there it's a little bit easier to see that that tav is not part of the root. The tav is the prefix. And roots 2 and 3 are the only root letters I see. The yod / original vav is down here in Sheol. Okay? The imperative undergoes aphoresis, as one-vav verbs do in the Cal. So instead of halech, it's just lech, right? I chop off the prefix and I leave roots 2 and 3. Root 1 is gone. Lech, walk. And then the Cal infinitive construct for one-vav verbs, leave roots 2 and 3, add the bonus tav, root 1 is gone. Lechet, add the segulate vowel pattern. Lechet, the act of walking. Okay, so those are my one-vav patterns. In the Hifil, remember what original one-vav verbs do is they get a holem vav with the prefixing, whether it's the hey prefix or the nutty prefixes. And we're going to see that with halach because halach thinks it's a one-vav verb. Holich, Cal perfect. He caused to walk, which means he led. Imperfect, yolich, he will lead. Imperative, holech, where I get the sere instead of the kirik yod, but I still have the hey prefix. And the holem vav because it's a one-vav verb. Lead. And then the Hifil participle masculine singular, molich. Get the prefix mem and the holem vav. Leading, since it's an active participle. Okay? So those are the forms of halach. It is a split personality verb.